Okay, I did it. I've got the, I don't have the minutes up, but I've got the discussion points and everything, so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So we have Chris, Joe, Skip, and Alfred. I've not seen Kevin or Kurt yet.
Kurt just signed in.
Okay. And we have Janet and Will.
Mike Travato.
Did I miss anyone?
Mike Travato's on now too, if you didn't.
Okay. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening.
Okay, so we'll go.
Chris, I'm on as well. It's Kurt.
Kurt, gotcha. Okay, good. So let's move on to the agenda. First item will be approval of the minutes of meeting from December the 14th. So those were sent out previously for review. Does anybody need a few minutes now to take a look at it before we either discuss or vote?
They look fine to me, Chris. I didn't have any, I would move to approve.
Okay.
Second that.
That was Alfred?
That's Skip.
Oh, Skip, sorry. Oops.
Charles.
Yes, for purposes of this discussion. Okay, so motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. 1, 2, 3. So it looks like they passed 5-0. The next item is the action item list, and I do want to just go through a couple of those items quickly so we can do two things: clean up the list and perhaps identify a couple of upcoming future items. So if you would take a quick look at that. Items 26 and 27, somehow it looks like I duplicated them about the overdredge. I'll go back to the earlier one and see if there really is a different item there, but I don't think this is going to get much traction. We talked about it the last time, and when Joe and I last spoke to GEI, he went back to the 1957 permit and confirmed that that 1957 permit was for -6 feet, plus 1 foot overdredge. So do people think that there's some avenues that we can still pursue, and if so, we can do so? But let's open it up to a quick discussion.
I don't know, I looked through my carton that we got from the library, and as far back as the dredging folders were, they were only from 1999. So all of the records that had to do with the dredging, he only said that it was a 6 feet with 1 foot overdredge. And I had nothing beyond or back farther than 1999.
Anyone have any other thoughts on avenues that we should investigate to see if it was ever dredging to a depth greater than -6?
I think the GEI engineers made it pretty clear that that original drawing they were looking at goes back as far as 1957.
Yes, yeah, well, certainly the permit did, and that would be the governing document for regulatory agencies. So
yes,
unless there's some objections, I think I will close this item on the action item list. If we have inspiration down the road and want to reopen it, we certainly can. But for now, I would plan to close it. The other item I want to talk about is number 29, and Mike Travato. This was on the list about, the availability of funds for the 2020 dredging, and I assume this is closed. One time you were searching for what would be the appropriate number about the time the bids were coming in.
Yeah, we're
we're good to go on that front right now.
Okay, so I'm going to close it. We'll probably open something in the future for the 2021 funding, but for now I'll close this.
Okay.
And the other thing, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to the 2021, 2022 plans, is we need to submit for amended permits, to dredge between the mooring piles and the bulkhead. And that's one of the early items that we've identified on the schedule. Specifically, the town needs to request an RFP from GEI. Dan Robbins had said he could draft language as to, what would make up the task necessary to get the amended. So we are waiting on language from him, and we'll have to push him for that so that we can turn around and issue such a request.
Yeah, he indicated that language would be forthcoming next week.
Yeah, okay.
And when we get that, Mike, would you be available to assist with that?
Yeah, it depends on the timing on that, Joe. Just in case you're not all aware, I'm actually going to be leaving my position on the 13th of January. So we'll tie up any loose ends I can on my part between now and then. We'll transition anything that's outstanding on my part over tentatively to Maria and Will until my replacement comes in place. So as long as I am here, I certainly can assist.
Okay. On the action item list, did anyone have any other comments or new items to add to it? Okay, let's move on to the status of the town dredging. And Will, if you would, give us an update on what you know and what you've seen over the last week or so.
I think they're pretty much today right at around their 30,000 mark. That last scow that went out, I was trying to pull that up. Might have been right about that. They did get in towards the launch ramp, and then that was at end of last week, right before the Christmas break. The beginning of this week, or when they got back, what was that, Saturday? Then they started to work their way over towards the pier, towards the fuel dock area, and work their way in on that. They were worried about the weather tomorrow night, I think was the latest. If it builds over 4 to 6 foot seas, so anywhere in around 5 feet, it becomes the captain's choice. Yeah. And hopefully that they downplayed the wind a little bit in that storm. I think they canceled the small craft advisory. So hopefully that'll give them a whole nother day of dredging, which would be, 1 to 2 scows full.
And what do you think each scow is? Somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 each?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as Will mentioned, they're knocking on the 30,000 cubic yards. And just to remind people, the significance of that is that they have to get 30,000 yards to get to substantial completion. So it looks like they'll achieve substantial completion. The other thing is we went into this exercise based on the earlier surveys, expecting that there would be 57,600 yards in front of us. The most recent pre-dredge survey by both Cashman and GEI shows that it's a lesser amount. It's 48,000 cubic yards. And I think the primary difference is because we've dredged the channel, and as we did the slope, 3-to-1 slope, it removed some of the stuff that was in our original 57,000. So the good news is there's about 9,000 yards less than what we expected to be dredged, but it doesn't look like we'll be getting the full 48,000. I think the clock is going to run out on us. Anything else about town dredging?
I think that, one of the pieces of information related to us by GEI is significant in that with the tide limitation where they are now, as well as working only with one scow instead of two, like they did in the channel, they actually only get 10 to 12 hours a day. It takes 5 hours to fill the scow. So the rate at which they're able to work is less than that of the channel.
Yeah, yeah, and it shows in their average daily production as well, because essentially they're shuttling only the one scow instead of the two. You're right.
Chris, I have a total pay volume removed right now, which would be 29,847 cubic yards.
29,847.
Correct.
Okay.
Joe or Chris, why are they only using one scow instead of two?
I think primarily because they really can't be too effective either side of a low tide cycle. But I'm not 100% sure that that's the reason, Kurt. I'm reasonably sure, but not 100%.
Yeah, it's my understanding that's the reason why.
They were digging tonight at low tide. I mean, it was dry.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they can't move the scow, but when there was no water between the scow and the launching ramp or the fuel dock, I mean, you could see where they'd been. It was either water or it was completely dry with a minus tide tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other reason that might come to mind is they were equipment bound, and their other equipment was tied up elsewhere.
I think that might be more of a realistic answer.
Yeah. One other item relative to the town dredging, and this really pertains to the channel dredging, is on January the 11th. There will be an inspection of the damage to the grants, that was done back in October with the tugboats. So the Army Corps, I think, will have a rep, and Cashman will have a rep. Nancy and Will are spearheading it. And I believe it's scheduled for 3:30 to coincide with the tide cycle. Anything else on town dredging?
I have one other question. I got one other question, maybe for Will. Will, do we know if the DPW is coming back this week?
I don't know if it's this week or next week. I'm not sure if it was going to be this Wednesday or like next Wednesday.
Because if Cashman does get to the pier, we don't want the sand to go back in the hole they dug.
No.
What's DPW to remove the sand under the pier like we've discussed previously?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, one thing, do we have on the agenda tonight to talk about holding them, whether to pay to hold them to wait for the permit or not?
No, we don't. If we want to talk about it, we should do so now.
So that's one thing that I know they've shared with you guys too, that if we want to wait for that permit, as of tonight, that permit has not come in for the extension permit, or the extension to the permit. So if we want to hold the dredge company on site, we have two options. One is to pay their daily rate of $45,000 a day, or the other is to pay to have them remobilize, which would have been at 300 something thousand. If we want to look at, if this permit doesn't come in by Thursday, the permit is up Thursday night at midnight, the 31st. long as I have my dates right. So those are our options with that, whether we want to hold them over or not. Now, talking with our engineer who spoke with Norm, the person who makes the other part of the decision is not there. I think it's I'm not sure if it's the endangered species. I forget which one it is. They are not in until the 30th. They are off on their Christmas holiday. So we probably wouldn't be looking at anything back before that, most likely. They do know that we are being held by that decision on whether we want to pay that to have them, cashmen, sit around and wait for this permit. They do have until the 17th to make a decision.
But the extension, as I understand, would only be until the 15th. Rendering it moot, if I'm understanding it right.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I believe GEI stated the 15th.
I got the impression from GEI that they're not overly optimistic that the extension will be approved. So today's the 28th. I guess what I would propose is on the 30th, we touch base with GEI to see if there's reason to believe we're going to get a response. And more importantly, or equally important, if we think we're going to get one in the affirmative. Obviously, nobody wants to pay extra money for extra days only to not get a permit. So I think we're going to have to assess it again on the 30th. Maybe we might be willing to go 1 or 2 days and pay the daily rate. But after that, it's starting to build up at 45 a day.
As of 5 o'clock today, GEI indicated that they were not that optimistic that the extension would be granted, because that was their read on it, because there has already been whale sightings in the area.
So let's talk a minute procedurally. If for whatever reason we felt optimistic enough that we should go, pick a number, 1 or 2 days or whatever, Mike, who has to do what to say, yeah, let's wait an extra day and pay it. Let's wait, a couple days, but no more than X number of days. How's that work procedurally, Mike?
Geez, you hit me with something I really hadn't thought about before.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, do this. I think we should have a discussion on the 30th. So between now and the 30th, maybe figure out procedurally
we can
what
do
has
that.
to happen.
We'll do that.
Would you guys need to set a special meeting for that?
I guess, Kurt, you have something?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, as much as I want to get as much done as we can and avoid mobilization and demobilization charges, I'm not sure, given what Joe said, and given the lack of personnel that are reviewing this and GEI's, comments, I'm not sure we want to waste $45,000 or $90,000 having those guys sit. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers to be careful about this, as we all know. But gosh, that's a scenario where it doesn't sound like there's much room for optimism, as much as you and I and the entire committee wants to be optimistic about it.
So if we discuss it on the 30th, that would give us time to say, truly, yay or nay. And the question was, what type of a meeting do we need? It's a somewhat of a strategy meeting. So does it need 48-hour notice or?
I believe it would need the, and the posting.
Yeah, we still have to post.
So I would recommend then that you would post as if you were going to hold that meeting. That way you've met the legal requirements, the open meeting law.
Right.
Well, we'd have to post it tonight though, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Well, now you say that today is the 28th, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mike, can you post? I can email Rebecca and see if she can. I mean, I think we're with,
It's 2 days, so it'd have to be, we're at 7:20. So the meeting would have to be like at 8 o'clock in 2 days. Why? So my suggestion, and everyone can chime in on this. If it's just reviewing of this process and money, it doesn't have to be the entire committee. It could be Chris, Will, Joe, Mike, right, Mike? And just review what might be done. I don't know if it needs a meeting discussion. What do you
Yeah,
guys?
we probably
Yeah.
could do it that way.
yeah, I agree. I agree, Janet. What we could do is just do a motion to delegate the authority to those guys to make a decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do we have the option of continuing this meeting to another set time?
You still would have to post it if it's a
Still have to
different.
post. Yeah.
I think the cleanest way is to take a motion and a vote, delegating what Kurt indicated to Thursday to authorize to make a decision.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I would move that Chris and Joe be delegated with the authority to make a decision relative to whether to hold Cashman in anticipation of permits coming in or not, based on the information that they're provided at the time.
Okay, so Kurt made the motion. We need a second.
is there a second? Kevin just seconded. Do we want to include Mike and Will's name on this? I don't think it's, just because it involves money. I don't know.
They're not members, but anybody can join in on the meeting and participate.
Yeah, anybody who's not a member.
That's what I wanted to clarify. Okay.
Another aspect to this, the GEI project engineer is on vacation this week. However, he is monitoring his email and today responded to an inquiry that Chris and I made. So he will continue to monitor his email, and I think it's realistic that up until Thursday, if he has received any word, any indication one way or the other from the Army Corps, that we'll be aware of that going into Thursday evening.
When I spoke with him today, he told me that he would call me ASAP on any notification.
Yeah, that's good. He's monitoring. I know, even though he's on vacation, I know he's still active and available. So do we want to go back to the motion to delegate? Motion was put forth by Kurt. I didn't hear a second.
Kevin seconded.
Kevin is on?
Yes, he is.
Guess he'd have to be in order to second it. Hi, Kevin.
I personally feel as though a member, even though they're not part of the task force, I think a member of the town should be part of that, so that when this goes to the Selectmen, we have a member supporting this and not supporting this according to the outcome. I mean, we're going to be looking for more money than we already asked for an extension on something that may or may not come in. And we could be told it's going to come in and not come in, or vice versa. So, I mean, I think that politically we should involve a member of the town of Wellfleet.
Janet, are you available?
Me,
Yes.
I'm not the money person.
No, let's
Well,
send it to,
Will,
you represent the board, though. You're the
Right.
liaison, and your presence would fulfill that need that Alfred has outlined.
as long as,
Or are you going to be out partying on New Year's Eve? Is that it?
I actually have a doctor's appointment.
why don't we do this along these lines, amend the motion to delegate to Joe and Chris with discussion to include Will and Mike Travato as to whether or not to hold Cashman in anticipation of a permit extension. And then we have town members and specifically assistant town administrator, which I think speaks to the money side of it.
Yeah.
And would be appropriate.
Yeah, my comment on that is that, you know, you guys can include whomever you want who are not committee members, meaning, you know, any member of the Board of Selectmen, any member outside this committee in discussions, which I think you should. I mean, I hear Alfred's concern, but I think you can do that offline. The issue is whether, you know, to what extent committee members can be involved, because they can't. We can't post and we can't constitute a quorum at that particular point in time. So, you know, I think the motion is fine because you guys can do whatever you want. And, you know, politically, I think you should reach out to the Board of Selectmen. You know, Janet can reach out to other members of the Board of Selectmen, discuss the issues, see what concerns are out there. You can consult with any individual member of the committee at any point in time to see if there are concerns. So I don't see the communication stops. Just the delegated authority of the committee is to you guys to make that decision.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we're only making a recommendation. We don't really sign off on the money expenditure. I don't think that's within our purview anyway. So I think we're just delegating what the DTF recommendation to the town would be with respect to holding Cashman.
That's correct. And I think, you know, I would assume, and you have historically reached out to people to, you know, get other opinions and so on. So I'm not concerned about that.
Okay, so you want to leave the motion the way it is?
I think it's fine unless another committee member has another issue or concern.
I think it meets the need. Any other discussion?
Yeah, just a quick question. Maybe it's my screen is a problem. Okay, there's Kevin. All right, got it.
so you're going to be meeting with GEI about the permit being extended and whether we should add a few more, whether we can get a few more days in of dredging. But it's not going to cost us any more money than we've already allocated. I'm simplifying this a lot. And I guess my concern would just be if it is involving money and contract, that Will and or Mike or both of them should be on it. But if it's just discussing and getting the information from GEI, I think it's fine. The way it was the way we delegated it.
Yeah, if the decision is made to extend it and pay the 45,000 daily fee, then we will be notifying the select board of that prior to Thursday, if that's our recommendation.
Okay.
given the way things are unfolding, I think that's probably unlikely.
Yeah,
The whales are out there and people are on vacation, and that's GEI's read on it. And they're usually pretty cautious when they give you a read and how they see something. So the way they're seeing it now, I think carries a lot of weight.
yeah.
We ready for a vote?
Well, ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. And this one looks like it's 6-0, Kevin having joined since the first vote. Okay. Next item has to do with permits, and obviously one would be the permit extension, which we've just covered. And then the other one will be the amended permits, which we talked about when we went over the action item list. Anything else on permits? Joe, any other updates?
No, I think it's two-pronged. As you indicated, the first is the amendment, which we've got to get going on. And the second is begin the process of securing the permit for Area 2. So those are two pretty clear goals now that we've made some progress that we can focus on.
Okay, next agenda item is the 2021-2022 plans and schedule. And so there's a couple of documents floating around, one having to do with defining the tasks and a way to structure what the next 2 years of dredging will be, and a schedule that goes with it. So what Joe and I would expect is we would update those documents to capture any additional comments from people, and then we would present it to the town administrator and/or the select board once we make any additional edits to them, so that everybody has a roadmap for the next 2 years as to what has to be done and when it needs to be done. So I'll start by saying, does anyone have any comments to the list of tasks?
None here.
Okay. And hopefully people had a chance to review it, but if not, shall we move on to the schedule, or do people need to take a quick look at the list of tasks again?
Look good to me.
Okay, then let's look at the schedule. And obviously these documents can and will get updated as events evolve. But it's good to have a starting point. So the schedule is just a simple bar chart saying when things need to occur in order to support the mission critical item, such as dredging season or submittal dates for grant applications and items like that. Okay, the third document has to do with Area 2 and whatnot. And my recommendation, and Joe's been on the same conversations, I suggest we hold this document until we get feedback from National Marine Fisheries. You know, we've asked them through the Corps to provide parameters on what would represent acceptable mitigation plans. So I would say let's hold this one in abeyance, and we'll continue to try and get parameters from National Marine Fisheries. Either way, it's in draft form, so if we want to issue it to town administration and select board, we can certainly do that as a draft.
Chris, one of the concerns I've had all along is with regard to dealing with National Marine Fisheries, it seems like we've always had a filter with the Corps or somebody else. Dan tried to break through that a couple of times, to sort of get direct communication and or propose alternatives that maybe the Corps wasn't, willing to, put on the table initially, but the town felt more strongly about, encouraging a resolution. So I'm wondering, going forward, who's going to play that role? Is it the Corps? Is it GEI? Is it the committee? What kind of interface?
Well, Kurt, yeah, Chris and I have had quite a few discussions with GEI and the Army Corps about that. And they have made it quite clear that everything we do has to go through GEI and then to the Corps. We are not allowed to have direct contact with National Marine Fisheries. Now, National Marine Fisheries makes a recommendation to the Corps. The Corps is the ultimate decider on that, not National Marine Fisheries, okay? The Corps, as they told us, places great weight on the recommendation from National Marine Fisheries and almost always goes along with it. So they're the key in this process. And the Corps has made it very clear to us that it's the Corps, GEI, and the town, but we have to initiate anything through GEI.
I'm not so concerned about that, Joe. I mean, I understand the hierarchy. My concern is that, that it doesn't seem to me that the town should be supplicant to the Corps with regard to negotiating conditions around mitigation that, that falls to the town. In other words, the town has a right to make its own decision about what it should or shouldn't do, or what it's willing to or not willing to do, with regard to demands from National Marine Fisheries. I mean, fisheries is going to make their demand, and the question is, how do we respond, right?
Well, they're making the demand, Kurt. However, they're making the demand to the Army Corps, not to the town. The Army Corps is going to take that demand into consideration, and the Army Corps is going to make the decision. So in a conference call that Chris and I had with one of the bigwigs at Army Corps and with GEI, Army Corps made it very clear that because they're the decision maker, we're going to deal with them, not any of the various agencies that are making recommendations to them.
Are you saying, though, that, just to be clear, that what the Corps has said is they are more than happy to conference with the town and GEI and act as one side in this discussion relative to marine fisheries requests?
That is correct. And they point out to us that they have to solicit recommendations from several agencies, one of which is National Marine Fisheries. The discussion is on National Marine Fisheries because they're the ones who are objecting so far, and it looks like it's going to go to mitigation. Now, regarding the town's position, there are two avenues the town can pursue. One is to engage in mitigation, which I believe we will be doing, but the other is at some point in time to appeal the Army Corps' decision to the Office of Economic Counsel in Washington, D.C. That body reviews the argument of both sides and renders a decision. And we're told that it is not unusual for that agency to side with the town over the federal agency. It's not unheard of. So those are the two avenues we have to pursue. But Army Corps has made it very clear that they make the ultimate decision and they will deal with us.
But I think, Kurt, to your point, yeah, the Army Corps are not able to randomly propose mitigation project. It has to originate with us. Obviously, we have to be willing to propose a certain mitigation plan, and then it would go to the Corps and then discussion with Marine Fisheries. But the plan that that's acceptable to us would have to emanate from us.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be clear about where the town's interests are being protected appropriately. That's all. You know, it seems a little bit strange to me that the town would be completely waiving its, it isn't, but you know what I mean? It feels a little bit like the town's waiving its responsibility to the Corps, and the Corps is then negotiating with National Marine Fisheries. And you know, I don't think that's the case, but I just want to be clear that that's not the case.
Yeah, I would hope that once we get some parameters that we would actually be part of discussions with the Corps and Marine Fisheries, not by ourselves, because as Joe explained, the Corps takes that role. But I would hope, in the interest of efficiency, that there would be a conference call to discuss some finer points. But
and in that context, the town is paying GEI to represent us and to put forth our best interest. So as we proceed, we're going to be developing a plan with GEI with regard to communication with the Army Corps. Now we have a lengthy packet prepared that is going out next week to the new administrator at the Army Corps to review. That's our first step.
I have a question. Let's say this whole thing goes negatively and we have to go, above the Corps or whatever level that is. I mean, are we talking a year, 5 years? I mean, how do we make sure that GEI, since we're basically putting all our trust into them, follow the timeline? And I realize that it's not just their timeline, it's the agency that they have to deal with. But I mean, how do we know that 2 years from now, we're not still going to be behind the 8 ball, which is possible. But I mean, how do we know that how do we know GEI is actually going to get this done with a time schedule where we're not at the last day waiting for a permit again?
Well,
Right, because we're there now.
GEI is working for the town with town oversight. So every step of the way to date that GEI has been involved, we have almost constant communication with them on the technical stuff, on the advocacy and so forth. And ultimately, GEI works for the town. And to answer your question specifically on the timeline, Alfred, if we have to decide how long we're going to go in this process before pursuing another avenue. And when that decision is made, GEI is going to respond to our wishes because they're working for the town.
Well, I understand that, Joe, but I guess my question is, if we expect to dig the mooring basin 2 years from now, or a date, pick whatever it is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would like GEI to tell us chronologically, moving back from that date, when all this stuff should be filed, so that we actually have a game plan to meet the date. And I realize that that date could be changed because of the agencies we work with. But I mean, I guess that's my question is, you know, on July 3rd, October 9th, where do they feel that all these things need to be filed so that we make sure we have the information that we can give them so that they don't miss these dates? And then we're sitting there saying, oh, the dredge is down the bay. Are we going to get to do this? I don't think we want to be in that position.
No, a couple of thoughts on that, Alfred. That's one of the reasons I want us to really focus on the schedule, and we'll update it as we go. And we'll do it, like you suggest, with hard dates. I mean, right now I have weeks measured by X's, but we'll come up with hard dates. At some point in time, as Joe was suggesting, also, you know, we'll have to invoke Plan B, which might be some political support or the White House office. And the other thing I want to be clear on for everyone is our timeline to get the Area 2 permit is to support October 1st of 2021. You know, we know we have Area 1 dredging to do, but if we can get a lot of that done, we want the opportunity to at least start Area 2 dredging still in 2021, because otherwise it's a heavy lift to get all of it done in one season. So our timeline will be to get the permit by October. And yeah, it's aggressive, but we need to stay focused on it.
I'd like GEI to tell us that themselves so that, you know, sometimes I'm not so sure we're on the top of their radar.
Alfred,
Yeah.
From what we have learned to date about the permitting process, when you apply that information to the goal of securing the permit for Area 2, in my opinion, if things don't get very active this spring, that's the timeline for us. Regardless of what anybody says, I want to see some action early this spring. And that's the timeline we've got to establish to make sure there's substantial movement forward for the town. I don't want to wait any longer than that.
No, I agree with you, Joe, but you know, our window of dredge opportunity is just so small.
Yeah.
Before we lose a whole year.
Yeah.
It is small, but I'm specifically, I'm talking like, you know, late February, March.
No, I know. We can start then.
You know, I'm not going to be happy if there isn't good movement by that time. And I think we have to decide where we're going to go at that point in time. I mean, one of the things we've learned from GEI regarding the amendment, for example, they are doing an amendment now for the town of Salem. And it's already been more than 5 months. So we need to jump on the amendment, you know, next week as soon as possible and start that process.
But they're also applying for an amendment, correct me if I'm wrong, on something that's already happened.
Yeah, that's an amendment. Our issue on Area 2 is different in that it is, at this point, strictly a marine fisheries issue. From a scheduling perspective, and I did say it was aggressive, but this is what we need to pursue. All of next year, such that we get an Area 2 permit in early August of 21, you know, to support 2021 dredging in Area 2 if we get that far. So it's an aggressive schedule, and we're going to have to stay on it. At some point in time, if GEI is not making headway with the Corps, or more specifically marine fisheries, we'll have to regroup among ourselves and see what other options we have, you know, be it the White House office or some political support or whatever else we can think of. And we'll have to pull that trigger pretty early on. certainly within the first quarter of 21 if necessary.
I guess to Alfred's point, I would feel more comfortable if we had some commitment from GEI as to when they think they should have, those permits in hand. In other words, what they think the realistic expectation is.
Yeah.
And then,
We'll do.
and then backing into it, if they're not willing to commit to something, that gives me a lot of concern, right? I mean, obviously they are not in control of agencies, but they've been dealing with these folks for so long. They really do have an understanding of how these agencies operate. And, we've got a time frame and a hard deadline that we're trying to meet. And I would think it would be reasonable for GEI to commit to something, at least put something on paper that says this is when we think we can have this completed by. And if it turns out that, they can't do it within the time frame that we're looking at, that's when we would say, well, what do we need to do to make that happen? In other words, if it's beyond your control, what assistance do you need from the town? For example, us going to, working political channels to get something to happen more quickly. But just getting I think if we get they should be willing to make a commitment. And if it's outside the time frame we're looking at, then we got to figure out what plan B is.
Yeah. Why don't I do this? I'll take the section of the schedule. You can take a look at where it says Army Corps permit for Area 2. I'll take that slice out of the schedule. We'll share it with GEI. We'll have discussion where if we need to add some extra steps, for specificity to that schedule, we'll do so. And we'll populate it with hard dates, not just X's, which can always be interpreted to be the start of the week or the end of the week. We'll populate it in more detail with GEI, with them committing to those dates.
Kurt, I can tell you right now, from what we've learned to date through the years, if we're looking at accomplishing next fall, the rest of Area 1, the amendment area by the bulkhead, and the beginning of Area 2, I'm back to saying, if we don't see some serious activity very soon, then we're going to have to take another direction. And I'm sure GEI might say something, well, if you have it by June or July. I don't agree with that. I want to see some serious activity in the spring.
Yeah, I think
we can get a timeline from them, but we've already been through the permit process. We've learned a lot. And based on that, I want to get going right away.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. It's an issue of strategy in terms of how to get commitments and how to get this thing done.
And in that context, as Chris can share with you, in the past year, there were a couple of occasions where we had to bang on GEI's door when we felt a couple of things were not moving. And we banged on their door and they responded. So in terms of oversight, we're watching everything they do. And if we don't agree with it, we're calling them on it. They're working for the town.
No question. And you've done a great job. No argument there. I think, I don't want to speak for Alfred, but, I've got a pit in my stomach about, the fact that things have dragged in certain areas that, for whether it's the CONSCOM permit or some things that really were in GEI's court that, I'm a little frustrated didn't get done in a more timely fashion.
Well, I think if we get a timeline and they don't follow it at that point, at least we have some, I don't want to say leverage, but we can say, hey, Joe. And Joe's already going to say, I know, I got to go. But I think the way it is now, without a timeline, we sometimes wait a week or two more than we should because we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We really shouldn't be giving our engineer the benefit of the doubt when we're paying him to do something on time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And again, that's why when we formulate the schedule, which will be their commitment, because we'll work with them to get the dates, and we'll put firm dates in. If they're supposed to produce a document by such and such, we will put a date in, not a week of, because right off the bat, you can lose a week if the difference between a Monday and a Friday. So we'll put hard dates in, and like you said, we'll have to hold them to it, and we'll have to hold ourselves to it. We have to produce certain things, requests for proposals, et cetera.
Let me say that when they provide that timeline soon, we're going to examine it. And there's a possibility we may not agree with it. We may think that they are not securing certain sign-offs soon enough. And we're going to bring it to this committee and discuss it. And if we have to go back to them and raise the red flag and demand that things be done sooner, we're prepared to do that. What else do we have, Chris? Anything? The schedule?
No. If people want to take a further look at the documents, the schedule and the tasks, and if you do have any comments and want to send them to me, but absent that, I'll clean it up. I showed you where the edits were from the comments I received from people. I'll clean it up and then we'll present it to the town as well. So, and then at the same time, we'll go out and we'll get the expanded detailed GEI schedule and commitment on the Area 2 permits. Anything else before we move on to when the next meeting should be? Any discussion items? Anybody?
When is the absolute start date for the Cape Cod Bay disposal site? Do we know?
I'm sorry, did you say start date or close date?
Start date.
I don't know. There's time of year restrictions for a variety of reasons, which take us to October 1st. But I realize that doesn't quite answer your question, Will. I don't know the specific date for it.
I think it's January 1st, unless you get the extension.
No, that's the close date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What my thought is there is any possibility of starting earlier?
Earlier than October 1st?
Correct.
Yeah, we've inquired about that in the past. And the response we got was, well, the contractor can come a week or two ahead of time and set everything up, but they can't actually start until October 1st.
But what we'll do is we'll look at which permit precludes that, because the permits have time of year restrictions. And effectively, it's October 1st. But we can go back and see which one is driving the October 1st.
Yeah.
You're thinking instead of waiting to the end and trying for an extension, try and get an early start.
Yeah, even if it's a week,
Yeah.
A week in September is better than a week at the end of December.
It's a good point. We'll follow up on that, and actually, I think I'll add that to the action item list so we don't lose track of it.
And does that have more to do with the dumping site? Because actually you could fill the scow and then October dump it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's filling a scow buys you 5 or 6 hours.
Well, still,
They
if they had 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, any day. I mean, if it's exactly a monitoring issue out in the bay for like the right whales or something like that, if they're willing to open it up a couple days early.
Going back when we secured the state permits, and the one obstacle we were facing in the final hour were the turtle people at the Endangered Species State Agency. And Harry Turkanian and I handled those negotiations with them and probed that area. And they were adamant at that time about October 1st. And as we move ahead with Area 1 and Area 2 now, the Army Corps also gets a sign off from that state agency as well. So I'd be surprised, as much as I'd like to, I'd be surprised if they would give us a waiver on that. They were very rigid about it at that time.
Okay, move on to next meeting, proposed on our 2-week cycle would be January the 11th at 7 PM. Does that work for everyone?
Does here.
I'm fine.
Good for me.
All right. All right, so we'll schedule accordingly. And that brings us to the opportunity for a motion to adjourn.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
This was asked by a couple other people in town. When they scoop up the solids and everything from the harbor, do they drain off the water, or is the scow taking the water out, or how does that work?
Yes, both. A lot of water drains out and some stays in because the consistency of it. So you will see a layer on top of that barge. It's pretty liquid stuff. But if you watch every pickup, a lot of water goes out of that.
Yeah, yeah,
So there is some, because when you see the full scow, you will see just a layer of water on top of it.
yeah. Okay. That's kind of what I thought, but people have been asking me. Good, thank you. All right, so,
Looking back over this year, I think we've accomplished a lot. I want to thank everybody for participating and working on this. It's been a great help.
Yeah,
well,
second, for sure.
yeah, and Joe, you've been instrumental. I'm sitting back where I'm just kind of the liaison. You guys are amazing at really getting this done. And Chris, you've done a really good job leading it all. So we'll look forward to 2021.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all of your very hard work.
Thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to
moved.
adjourn.
Kevin had his hand up first. Alfred, you have an opportunity to second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Good job, Alfred.
This motion almost always passes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? All right, 6-0. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy New Year, and we'll keep everyone up to speed and up to date on what shakes out with the permit extension or not, whichever way it goes.
Great.
Happy New Year to 2021.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank
see
you.
you guys.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.